everybody. Welcome to the official Big Bang Theory podcast. I am your host, Jessica Radloff. So our next guest today, I am really thrilled to welcome someone that was so important to the success of the Big Bang Theory. He is the co-creator of 2.5 Men with Chuck Lorre, and he was also an executive producer and writer on the Big Bang Theory. Please welcome the talented and wonderful Lee Aronsohn. It's nice to have you here.
Nice to be had.
It's our first time meeting in person. We did our interviews for the book on Zoom. So this is the first time to have you in person. Well, I brought you in today for a very important episode. It is season 1, episode 10, called The Loobenfeld Decay, which aired on March 24th, 2008.
Ah, yes, I remember it well.
I know you do. And what's funny is that, well, for a lot of us that either covered the show or you worked on the show, you don't remember the titles of these episodes.
Oh, absolutely not.
And what happened in them.
Nope.
So I like to refer to this episode
as the one where.
Exactly. That's why Friends. That's why Friends was so smart. Right. The one where this happens. Yeah. You guys, you decided to just add more work to your plate with these titles. But this is the episode where, for the first time ever, Sheldon knocks 3 times. And you were the man responsible for coming up with that.
Apparently so.
I mean, that deserves major. You are an icon in the Big Bang world. There needs to be a statue of you outside Warner Brothers. That's what we need to have. Let me read you the log line before we jump into the episode. Leonard and Sheldon each tell a lie to avoid going to see Penny on stage singing in a production of Rent. However, Sheldon's lie grows completely out of control, becoming too complicated for his own good. And it truly goes out of control, because we've never seen Sheldon truly spiral like this when it comes to lying. He never lies. He always is very upfront with people. And it's a really, really funny episode. But before we get into all of that, give us a little bit of insight about how you came on to Big Bang, because you and Chuck were in the throes of doing 2.5 Men when Big Bang launched.
Yeah. Well, you have to go back a little even farther to how I started working with Chuck, which was I was on a show called Joe's Life. And the showrunner on that show was a guy named Bob Meyer. And Bob Meyer had been one of the EPs of Roseanne, and Chuck was his co-EP, right? So I'm working for Bob on a show that is going over a cliff. And meanwhile, Chuck is starting Grace Under Fire,
right,
which was a hit out of the gate, but he needed help.
Yes.
And so he asked Bob, do you know anybody?
Okay.
And Bob says, well, I know this one guy, but you may want to keep him on a short leash. So Chuck, I went over, I met Chuck, and, he really was, it was like going into one of the trenches in World War I. He was an embattled guy at the time, and he gave me like a 2-week deal or something. just put me on probation, and I guess I passed the audition, and so I stayed on Grace Under Fire till the end of that season, and then Chuck did not go back, and I was sort of seen as someone allied with Chuck, and so I was not asked back. And then what was next? Sybil.
Right.
Sybil, I was on from the start. I was Chuck's co-exec on that show. And then Chuck went to Fox, and I took a deal at Columbia, and Chuck created Carmen, Dharma, and Greg, and I created a show called Life and Stuff.
Life and Stuff.
Yeah, and Dharma and Greg lasted years, and Life and Stuff lasted days. So then Chuck followed Peter Roth to Warner Brothers and had a big deal here. And we stayed in contact and kind of working together. Chuck wrote a bunch of pilots that I kind of gave my input on, helped out a little bit. And nothing went. And we shot a couple that I think were ahead of their time. And then 2.5 Men was just like this script deal where the main thing that Chuck was working on was an on-air commitment for Tyler Perry. Really? Yeah. So it was, and Chuck has told this story over and over again, but I was about to lose my health coverage at the Writers Guild, and I needed a WGA gig. And so the guy that I had worked with at Columbia who gave me the deal, Eric Tannenbaum, had a pod deal now, and he came to Chuck and wanted him to develop this two brothers story.
Okay.
And Chuck wasn't particularly interested. Why does he need that? And I said, hey, here, I'll tell you what.
I need it.
Yeah, I need it. So, if you'll like just supervise this, and then I'll help you out on the Tyler Perry thing. And I figured, the Tyler Perry thing would go, and the brothers thing would disappear. But at least I'd have my health insurance. Didn't turn out that way. So that's how I ended up on 2.5 Men, really totally by a happenstance. And 2.5 Men became a hit, and we became...
Right out of the gate, by the way.
Yeah, it was. It was a great pilot. It's one of those things where it was the right script with the right cast on the right network in the right season, in the right time slot. Everything just came together.
Yes.
And so before you knew it, here we are, we're on a hit show, and Chuck now has the opportunity to develop other stuff. And Bill Prady, who had been on Dharma and Greg, and I guess ran Dharma and Greg after Chuck left.
Right.
I guess, I don't know a lot about the evolution of the Big Bang idea, but I guess it was based on Bill's experience working in Nerdville with nerds.
And Radio Shack and all those different areas.
They shot a pilot, the original Big Bang pilot, which I helped out on, and it did not get picked up.
Right.
And to everybody's surprise and shock, CBS gave them another shot at a pilot. And so they rewrote, changed the female character completely and changed a couple of the other minor characters. And again, I helped out on that pilot. And that pilot got an order. I don't remember how much the initial order was. It was 13 or 6.
Right. And this was also the first season there was a writer's strike.
Yes.
So you only had the first 7 or so episodes that aired until that shut it down. And then it came back for the final 9, I believe.
Okay.
Something
I
around
believe
there.
you.
Okay.
I do remember.
Apparently I wrote a book on it, so,
But when it got picked up, I'll be very honest with you, I didn't think it was going to last.
Right.
I thought, okay, how far can you go with 2 guys who have no social skills and a ditzy girl? It's kind of a limited premise.
Yeah.
And so Chuck asked me if I could help out, because Chuck had at that point no experience in running 2 shows simultaneously.
Right.
And
to be fair, I don't know how many people do or would know how to do that.
True. I wasn't saying that as a judgment, but
I know.
as an explanation for why he would ask me to come on board.
Absolutely.
So that, I guess the idea was that we could both be going back and forth between 2.5 Men and Big Bang. So I said, sure. Well, why not?
Yeah.
And
keep that health insurance going.
Exactly. And you're right. We I don't even remember, whether it was successful right out of the gate, but I guess it was, because when the strike came, we were very worried that we were going to lose the momentum.
Right.
And, so the strike was kind of stressful.
Yes. And the strike, in the end, actually helped Big Bang because it was being rerun all the time on CBS. It was also airing on airplanes. I think American Airlines had it. Yeah, and it was kind of like an early streaming experience or experiment where you could go back and constantly watch reruns of this show. And by the time it did come back in late spring of 2008, enough people had familiarized themselves with it that the ratings started to go up. So it was really interesting. But yeah, it was not as successful early on as 2.5 Men was.
No, but nobody could have dreamed that it would become more successful.
Right.
and lucky me,
So what was it like in those early days of Big Bang? Because there was a lot of turnover. A lot of the writing staff that was on season 1 did not come back for season 2. And anytime you are doing a first year show, it is the hardest.
Oh, absolutely.
To do.
Trying to lift something from, a dead stop and lift it over your head is a lot harder than keeping it up once it's up. And I don't remember. I remember a few people that came and went, but the thing is that when you start a show, if you can, you staff it with people that you've worked with before and trust.
Yeah.
Chuck had already done that on Big Bang Theory. We were all there.
Right.
And it was a much different type of show.
Yeah.
I think one of the reasons he thought I might be a good fit is I don't have any science, knowledge, but I am a comic book and pop culture nerd.
And explain why you are, because you have experience with comic books.
Well,
Our listeners may not know.
Well, I was into comics as a kid, and then once I graduated college, having decided that law school was not really for me, not my jam, I opened a comic book and used record store in Lincoln, Nebraska, where this girl lived that I was involved with at the time. And we did that. I did that for a couple of years until she dumped me, and then I came to Los Angeles because, who the hell wants to be in Lincoln, Nebraska with no girlfriend?
That's where, if I'm not mistaken, you guys got the idea to base Penny from Nebraska,
I guess.
right? But I think it was Omaha.
Okay,
sure, why not? But Nebraska,
sure, why not?
yes,
sure,
exactly.
Why not? I'll believe you.
How much interaction did you have with the cast in season 1? Because except for Johnny and Kaylee, everybody else was pretty new at that point.
Mm-hmm. Well, a lot of interaction because, I was always there for run-throughs and show night, and shooting pre-shoots and show nights. And, I kind of always have notes. If you read the book, you'll see some fun quotes about me by people who are commenting on my endearing habit of wanting things exactly right. But I had a lot of interaction with the cast. Really incredibly talented cast. Really, really surprised me that nobody went off the rails. There's the first show I've ever been on that didn't get canceled and did not have a star that, had a severe personality disorder. The fact that these kids, became very, very famous in a fairly very short period of time. I mean, Johnny was used to it, I guess, and Kaylee to a certain extent, but the other kids,
right?
No, the fact that, there was no rehabs, no DUIs, it's a great credit to them.
It really, truly, truly is. There is a photo that is so funny. I should find a way to put this on the Big Bang Theory's YouTube page. Kaylee had given me all of her Polaroids for the book to go through and pick out photos. And I remember looking through her Polaroids one day, and there is this man standing where the audience is by the rafters in a purple, sequined suit. It's a whole purple sequined bodysuit. Do you have any idea what I'm talking about?
No.
Because that man is you.
What?
Yes.
No.
I have this photo, and I have it saved in my phone.
A purple sequin bodysuit?
You are in a bodysuit, and I don't know if it's for a Halloween theme week or what.
I mean, I dressed up when they did a Ren Fair episode, and I know I had a costume on for that.
What did you wear for that?
Just a troubadour kind of thing with the hat. And I got a picture somewhere of my sitting in Video Village, wearing the costume. But I do not remember
a purple glittery bodysuit. I will find this photo, and we will have to.
Are you sure it's me?
Yes, I'm sure it's you.
I look like a lot of people.
There is no mistaking your hair, and you have you're tall. It is you. unless you had some doppelganger on this set, it is you.
Well, if you show me the picture, I'll be able to tell you whether or not it's me, but I have no memory of a purple glittery bodysuit. But, you know, on the other hand...
You wore it well, I have to say.
Okay, great.
You wore it very well.
You know.
All right. Well, let's talk about the Loobenfeld Decay, episode 10, season 1. The 3 knocks, which it's fascinating to watch this for the first time play out, because in the show, Sheldon frequently knocks multiple times, normally on Leonard's door in the episode, but also once on Penny's door. And we're going to listen to these knocks because I noticed something about it. And I think we should actually listen to it first and then have you talk about it. So let's play the multiple knocks for the very first time on The Big Bang Theory. I'm telling you, it's a big deal in the Big Bang world. So we got to dissect it. So let's play this clip, which you can watch in full on Max, and you should.
Leonard. What? I need to speak to you.
It's 2 o'clock in the morning.
It's important.
I highly doubt that. No way. Are you still out there?
Yes.
What?
You're right, it can wait until morning.
As I was watching this episode last night, I was going through and counting the amount of knocks at each scene. Yes, and then sometimes there was... So the first one, Sheldon knocks 3 times at Leonard's door in the middle of the night, but we almost see him do it again before Leonard answers.
What I was hearing was knock, 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 Leonard, knock, 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 Leonard, knock, 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 knock.
Yes. In the second time that we see Sheldon knock on Leonard's door, it's 4 knocks. Mm-hmm. The third time, when Sheldon knocks on Penny's door, it's 3, but almost 4. Okay. And then the fourth time, it's clearly 3. So...
Okay, it's like I'm talking to Sheldon here.
Okay, so first, walk us through you coming up with, no, 1 knock is not going to do it. We need to see Sheldon make a habit of this.
Yeah, I wish I had a clear memory of it.
Okay.
My memory of it is obviously faulty because I remember pitching it. If it happened the way I remember it, the first scene would have been with Penny, because I remember pitching a knock on Penny's door.
Right, and that's what you said in the book too. That was your first memory.
Right.
Is him
so
at
obviously, I am not a reliable witness. I do remember the thought that went into it was not any kind of analytical thought. It's just, you know, when you're a writer, when you're an actor, any kind of a performer, timing is incredibly important. Mm-hmm. And the people who are the most successful are the people who've got like this internal metronome, you know? Jack Benny is the classic example of that, knows exactly how long to take a pause before going, well. And the same thing especially in sitcom writing, because you've got a live audience, you've got to have a sense of where the pauses go, you know, what it is that's going to coax the audience into laughter. So all I remember is that there was this scene with knocking on the door, and it was just, you know, just this random knocking. And somehow something in me said, no, there needs to be some order to this. There needs to be some structure. And, you know, reverse engineering it, I can see that, yeah, it fits Sheldon to have structure. Mm-hmm. You know, he needs structure. I don't know that I was thinking that at the time. It was just like, no, wouldn't it be funny if Sheldon went dot, 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 you know, dot, 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 dot. Although I thought it was 3. I thought it was dot, 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 dot. But, you know, it's what, 25 years, 24 years? No, it's not that long.
Why
no, it is.
Do our
it's
math?
20 years.
It's 20. Yes.
It's 20 years.
2007. This was 2008, this particular episode. So
I thought the first... Oh, yeah, 2.5 Men started in 2003.
Right. So it's
and
not
then 4
quite...
years later for Big Bang Theory.
Yes. So I know. It's been a long week for me.
It's been a long career.
Yes.
I don't remember Jack.
By the way, I do have to say, this is a total tangent. You have worked on truly some of the most iconic shows of all time. You've worked on The Love Boat, Who's the Boss, Murphy Brown. I know I'm forgetting more.
Charles in Charge.
Charles in Charge. Like, these shows are so iconic and are formative to so many of us.
I was very lucky, but you also have to point out that for every iconic show I worked on, half a dozen that nobody ever heard of, nobody cared about, and nobody will ever remember.
For the purpose of this podcast, we're going to focus on your successes.
I think, everybody focuses on the success. Why not be different? Let's focus on the failures.
The ones that did not work.
And there's a lot of interesting stories in the failures. I got to tell you that. But in fact, I have been doing this, or I had been doing this, since I don't do it anymore, since 1978.
Wow.
Is when I started on The Love Boat. Where I got my first assignment was on The Love Boat. And
it was exciting and new.
Then I took a few years off to do drugs, and then I came back and, did Charles in Charge and Who's the Boss, and eventually Grace Under Fire and Sybil and Murphy Brown and 2.5 Men and Big Bang Theory.
Obviously, the multiple knocks worked out so well for this show, and it was so in line with who Sheldon is. But was there anything, speaking of so-called failures, and I hate to say the word failure because I truly believe that sometimes our failures help us get to where we need to be, but was there anything that you did pitch that you remember on Big Bang that didn't quite work out, that you had an idea for, either with a character?
Why would I remember my failures that way?
Because we just talked about that, Lee.
No, they're interesting, but they're not fun to remember for the person who did it. What I remember about Big Bang is not any personal, there was, infinite pitches that Chuck would go no to.
What do you remember any that you were really passionate about?
Not on Big Bang. On 2.5 Men for years I pitched. No, wait, it was on Sybil.
Oh.
It started on Sybil, moved over to 2.5 Men. On Sybil, if you remember, Sybil's best friend was Marianne. And
yes,
she was,
Christine Baranski.
Yeah, and she was stalking her ex-husband, right? And so all year on Sybil, I was pitching she should have night vision goggles, right?
Okay.
It became a joke.
Okay.
It's obviously Marianne needs to own night vision goggles because she's stalking her ex-husband. So I said, Chuck, no. And I think eventually I got night vision goggles on 2.5 Men. Somewhere. But I kept it. There was also something I pitched over and over again for Alan on 2.5 Men, which was Alan has an invention, because he's a chiropractor.
Yes.
And so my idea was Alan invents something called the AccuCrack, which is something that allows you to crack your own back. And he goes on Shark Tank. And this was when, after Charlie had left and we had the new character.
Right, Ashton Kutcher.
Ashton Kutcher playing Walden, who was a billionaire.
Right.
So the idea was, Ashton's character was on Shark Tank and Alan came on to pitch his AccuCrack. And, Chuck didn't like that.
Chuck didn't like it.
I still think it would have been a great episode.
I've been trying to get Chuck to join Instagram for years. I think it would be a great idea to have him on there. He won't do it.
No, there's a why. What does he need that for?
Well, for our benefit. I want Chuck to be, so I can tag him in photos, and he won't do it.
Chuck
it's really just for my benefit.
Exactly. and no, Chuck... Why does Chuck need the aggravation? He doesn't. He keeps a low profile, and for the most part, and if I were him, I'd do the same. I made a big mistake when 2.5 Men first became a hit because it was really the first hit that I really felt ownership of.
Right.
I got vanity plates. 2NAHAF.
Oh, my God. Okay.
Huge mistake, because at the gas station, people would, talk to me and ask me questions, and I get honks on so I quickly changed them back. And from then on, I just want to be anonymous. I don't need people to know who I am. And I know Chuck feels the same way.
That is hysterical. Did you throw out the vanity plates or did you save it?
I don't know. I have a plastic one that somebody gave me. But I think you have to exchange them.
That you have to exchange them. That's amazing. I want to read you in the book, by the way, what Peter Chayko said. Of course, he was the longtime editor on the show.
Right. Great editor. Barbara.
Yes. And he was there when you were kind of working out in your head these multiple knocks by Sheldon. He says, I was there when Lee did it. It was just a moment where Sheldon knocked once and Penny answered. I saw Lee acting it out in his head and thinking, if Sheldon knocks 3 times, is that funny? And then he pitched it, and that became fodder for the series.
That's the way I remember it, but obviously the actual evidence of the actual evidence of the videotape. Let's go to the videotape.
Yeah, you see more. Although I was thinking, maybe you recorded or filmed the knocks with Penny first, and then went back and did it. But do you ever think about the fact that what you created for Sheldon in this episode, the fact that it lasted throughout the entire run of the season, and it became such a fans.
I seem to remember that they dropped it after a while. I mean, I left the show after the 4th year.
Well, they didn't drop it, but they kind of changed the reason behind Sheldon.
Oh yeah, I did read that.
Yes,
and that was great. I think that's great, giving it a backstory. Warning his father that he was coming in.
That he was coming
in on them having sex.
But if you talk to Steve Milaro, he will probably tell you that maybe not have been the best choice to kind of reconfigure the history with that, because what happened then is on young Sheldon, George did not technically cheat on his wife, Mary, and they had to figure out a way in order to make sense of what Sheldon said, and they ended up addressing it in the final season of Young Sheldon. No spoilers if no one has seen the finale of Young Sheldon yet, or the last season, but they explain why Sheldon might have gotten that or had the wrong impression at the time.
I think Steve should have had to work for his salary, and I don't feel bad at all that I set up some continuity problem for him. I
feel like you should also get extra pay for every time Sheldon knocks on this series.
It's also, the other big thing was Bazinga.
Yes. And that Stephen Engel, who was a writer, came up with.
That, and I had a differing memory. I'm willing, I believe Stephen, but I also remember at a point during a rewrite or something, I held the pencil. So maybe Steve pitched it and I wrote it in or something. But I do remember just feeling this is good. This is right for Sheldon.
Yes.
And it wasn't anything that was meant to go for, become a T-shirt.
Yes. And yet it did. It became this huge buzzword that still exists and is all over T-shirts. And the one thing I have to say, it drives me crazy, is that journalists will use the word Bazinga to often lead off their articles about Big Bang,
of course,
thinking that it makes sense in the context of what they're writing about. But Bazinga as a word on this show means joke's on you.
Yeah, gotcha. So
I remember when my book was first announced and so many journalists wrote Bazinga, and I'm like, no, it's not a joke. The book is really coming out. Let's not scare people. There really is a book. But, it kind of took on a life of its own. So
yeah, so you never know.
You never know. Let's get back now to the main storyline. Of course, for us, it's the 3 knocks is the main part of this episode. But the episode's main storyline is Leonard not wanting to go see Penny on stage, and this whole lie completely going off the rails. Let's listen to this clip, by the way, which you can watch the whole thing on Max.
You told her I lied? Why would you tell her I lied?
To help you.
I'm sorry, I'm not seeing the help.
She was going to see through your lie eventually, so I told her that you were lying to protect me.
Oh, I'm getting a bad feeling.
Hunger? Indigestion? I'm sorry, I'm really not very good at this. Anyway, Penny now believes that on Friday night, we're going to participate in my cousin Leopold's drug intervention.
Cousin Leopold.
Who most people call Leo, but he also answers to Lee. Remember that, it's important.
What's important?
Details, Leonard. The success or failure of our deceitful enterprise turns on details.
Do you have a cousin Leopold?
No, I made him up. I think you'd call him Lee.
I already told her a lie. Why replace it with a different lie?
Well, first of all, your lie was laughably transparent, where mine is exquisitely convoluted. While you were sleeping, I was weaving an unravelable web.
Unravelable?
Yes. If she Googles Leopold Houston, she'll find a Facebook page, an online blog depicting his descent into drug use, and a desperate yet hopeful listing on eHarmony.com.
Why would I go to a drug intervention for your cousin?
Because it's in Long Beach, and I don't drive.
We're going to Long Beach?
No, of course not. There's no cousin Leo. There's no intervention. Focus, Leonard.
Oh, come on.
We just leave the house on Friday night, and we return in the wee hours, emotionally wrung out from the work of convincing Leo to go back into rehab.
So he goes back into rehab?
Yes, but he can relapse if Penny ever invites us to hear her sing again.
God knows how you guys came up with this in the writer's room. This is...
Yeah, God must, because I don't. I got to tell you, I watched this episode last night in preparation for this podcast because you told me this was going to be what we were talking about. I have a writing credit on this episode. I have no recollection whatsoever of any of it, except the guest star. I remember him being there. But in terms of the story and how we came up with it, I have no specific recollection. What I do notice, though, in watching it, is that we're still finding Sheldon's character. He's a little more animated and present and involved in human affairs than he became.
Yes.
And I think that's fascinating. That the whole premise that he would care enough to make a lie is something I don't think we would have done later, but he would have had to been drag kicking and screaming to actually help Leonard with something like that. But the fact is that once he commits to it, he's going all the way. That's very Sheldon.
Yes, absolutely. Also, I'm curious how many times they had to do this scene, because just saying unravelable, like I can't even do it. Can you do it?
Unravelable.
Well done. This is why you got paid more than
Parsons, I don't. I would be surprised if it was an abnormal number of takes, because Jim Parsons never flubbed. Yeah. Jim Parsons is a human tape recorder. I mean, you give him on a show night, in the middle of a taping, you can replace a speech like that with another hunk, and he'll just go out and do it,
By the way, is your first name really Leopold Aronsohn?
No, just Lee.
Did you come up, is that how they came up with the name?
I don't know.
I'm going to go with it and say that is where that they got Lee from that. You mentioned the guest star in this episode, played by DJ Qualls, who people know from Breaking Bad, Fargo, Supernatural, The Man in the High Castle. Right. And you don't expect to meet this fake cousin in the show at this point, but we do. But also I'm obsessed with Johnny Galecki's reaction at the refrigerator when he realizes that Sheldon has actually brought in an actor to play his fake cousin. And Johnny's like, oh my God, like it's just so brilliant.
Well, Johnny was the master of, exasperation, and looking, just looking around like God is going to provide him with an answer.
That's what he would do when I'm like, I need to get you on Zoom. We have to do another interview for the book. And he goes, oh my God, another one. And then he loved it and he'd have the best time. And he'd call me. It's like, want to get on Zoom now? Let's do another interview. And it was so funny. I noticed, especially in these early episodes, and you see it in this episode too, there's not a lot of B and C storylines. There's really just one main storyline in these early episodes.
Yes.
When did that start to shift? And was that something that you guys often talked about?
We didn't talk about it. It just became, as we added characters, then we had to add more storylines to service them all.
That makes sense.
Yeah, at the beginning, it's really just Leonard and Sheldon and Penny.
Right.
Kutropali and Wallowitz don't even show up
right.
until halfway through the second act.
Yeah.
And so there's no room for a B or C story. There's no need for it.
Right.
As we added, Kuthrapali and Wolowitz became more integral to the show, and then there was, then girlfriends came around, and and coworkers and comic book store owners and arch rivals and nemesises. There was a lot more fodder, a lot more grist for our mill, and in fact, that's why the show survived, contrary to what my instinct was at the beginning. Mm-hmm. I think if we hadn't expanded it like that, the show would not have survived.
Right.
We needed more characters, we needed more relationships, we needed more story possibilities.
Well, that's why it's so impressive, an episode like this, how you truly made this lie that Sheldon and
it just
expand
spins and
this
spins
way.
and spins and spins. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really impressive, because I would imagine this show is hard to write no matter what, but maybe it's easier when you have multiple storylines going, or not. But I feel like
it depends on the storyline.
Yeah.
If you've got just one story, but it's got a clear beginning, middle, and end, that's not hard to write.
Right.
But if you've got a story where you've really only got a premise, and now you got to make it go somewhere, create a middle and an ending, that can be very tough. And when you can't cut away to a B story.
All right, you ready to play a game?
Isn't that how Scream started?
I'm going to try to go easy on you. You said don't ask.
Trivia, no.
Trivia, no. Although now I do need to ask you this.
What?
What is Sheldon's middle name? Oh, come on.
I Sheldon Lee Cooper?
Yes. Is that you?
I have no idea. I honestly don't.
You should say it is. Say,
yeah,
I'm the
sure,
reason
it's
for
me.
Sheldon's
It's
middle
me.
name.
Sure. I wouldn't have dared pitch it. I would not have dared pitch myself. Chuck would never let me hear the end of it. So somebody else must have pitched it.
I actually think you do well with these trivia questions, so I'm just going to ask you one more.
Fine,
because
display
you're on a
my
roll.
ignorance.
You're batting 1,000 right now.
No place to go but down.
Okay, where did Sheldon meet Amy?
God, I do remember. Okay, I remember coming up. The story meeting script conferences that led to Amy Farrah Fowler. That I do remember. He wouldn't have been on a dating site, would he? Was he?
Well, it was actually Raj and Wolowitz who...
Oh, yes. They signed him up.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was going to say, you're very close to...
Yeah. Oh, that... Yeah, and that's how... Okay. Here's the thing.
Tell me, Lee.
Okay. We had over... I don't know what season it is that Amy Farrah Fowler was introduced, but...
End of 3.
Okay, so during the second season, particularly, and I guess and the third season, we started trying to bring in women,
right.
Girlfriends,
yes.
and, more continuing female characters, so that Penny wasn't the only one. And we tried a number of them, very good actresses.
Yeah.
People that Chuck had worked with before.
Right. Sarah Gilbert as Leslie Winkle,
yeah.
Sarah Rue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they just, it didn't gel.
Right.
They didn't get traction. And so I don't want to take credit for it, but I do remember the discussion where, we came up with the concept that there'd be a female Sheldon, somebody that basically had all his characteristics, but in a genetically female form. And I do remember the discussion of what's her name was, I don't know where the Amy and the Fowler came from, but we did discuss Amy's parents must have conceived her when Farrah Fawcett Majors was big. And so that's why her middle name is Farrah.
Yep. And you like the way that it sounded.
Amy Farrah Fowler,
yeah,
of course.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why it was interesting. When Chuck was here, I was asking him about, it was established in the pilot that Sheldon's sister Missy worked at Fuddruckers. And I said to Chuck, I was like, where did you, I mean, I loved Fuddruckers as a kid, but like, did you love Fuddruckers? Is that why? And he goes, no, I just like the way that it sounded.
Yeah, it's funny.
Yeah.
It's a funny word.
And that was the reason a lot of
Fuddruckers.
these, you're actually doing very well at this trivia. So I'm going to ask you another question, because if you don't know the answer to this one, Leopold, then I'm throwing you out. What state did Penny live in before moving to Pasadena, California?
Nebraska.
Thank you. See, you've underestimated yourself.
Well, this is not trivial trivia. I mean, you go online.
I know there's some trivia.
You know, what color socks was Sheldon wearing? What T-shirt did Wallowitz have on when, whenever?
All right, let me try this one. Can you spell Koothrappali?
I can, but I won't.
Well, why not?
I'll give it a shot.
Okay, go.
Koothrappali. 2 L's?
2 P's.
2 P's. Okay.
But close. You did really well with this game. It's hard to remember it. So Steve Morrow got it wrong at one point too. So he's like,
I never had to spell it. We did not write our own scripts. There's a writer's assistant, and there's automatic spells completion in final draft. So nobody really had to know how to spell it. I could tell you about the comic book covers that hang on Leonard's wall. I think it's Leonard's wall. They are from my comic collection.
Really?
I mean, they're not the originals, obviously. We've got color Xeroxes. But yeah.
That's really cool. How long did you run your comic book store for?
A couple of years.
Okay.
And I sold it to a guy who was working for me, who kept it open, and it's still open in Lincoln, Nebraska now.
Wow.
And he just retired.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's my important legacy.
Listen, any chance you go back there and run it again?
Not to run it, but I have been back a couple of times and visited. Yeah.
I love that. Well, you're going to come back for another episode in season 2, which is about Sheldon trying to learn to drive for the first time. So
God, yeah, I remember that.
Okay, good.
That one I do. Well, I may not remember it next year, but I'm not getting younger, dude.
Listen, I only wrote this book a few years ago, and sometimes I have to go back and go look at it to be like, wait, what did it, it's the kind of thing where there's so much information that you have to forget stuff in order to put new stuff in.
You got a limited space in the file cabinet, and the older you get, the more crap is in the drawers.
I love it. Well, thank you for coming up with the multiple knocks. You truly made a lasting legacy with that brilliant choice. So whatever failures you had on the show, I think this success with the 3 knocks outweighs anything else.
Well, thank you. I'll take it.
You're very welcome. I'm going to have you better write a knock knock joke or something then in my book when you sign it.
Okay.
Pleasure as always. This podcast was produced by Warner Brothers Unscripted Television in partnership with Max.